Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Bury Our Bones with Cinema, the podcast that lives, breathes and dies classic movies, not so classic movies and everything in between. For the first time ever, I'm joined by a childhood friend, the Joe Satriani to my Joey Tribbiani, the Bruce Springsteen to my Bruce Banner, the wonderful Simon Keet. In today's episode, we get ready to show off our best Bruce Lee impressions, persevere in the hope that we get that flawless victory, and run away from a four-armed creature that's trying to crush our skulls. So join us as we both take a trip down memory lane to our childhood as we bury our bones with Paul W.S. Anderson's 1995 beat-em-up action movie, Mortal Kombat.
Were you missold shares in the Galactic Empire's Death Star project? Did you lose money due to bad planning and failed insurance policies? Well, don't worry. We're here to help and you could be eligible for compensation. Here at Find 'em, Fleece 'em and Flee, we've helped millions of people just like you claim the compensation that is rightly theirs. That's right, millions of people just like you have already claimed. You could be next. Were you not made aware of the potential danger to your investment posed by the insurgent rebel army? The Empire has put aside billions in galactic credits for compensation for losses due to intergalactic terrorism. Let the team here at Find 'em, Fleece 'em and Flee get you the money you deserve. No win, no fee. Call Find 'em, Fleece 'em and Flee on 0800 Vapor Chasers for your free, no obligation consultation today.
So yeah, we are welcoming Simon to the Bury Our Bones with Cinema podcast. It's very, very, very lovely to have you appear on an episode or two, or who knows, we don't know at this stage. So how does it feel to be on Bury Our Bones with Cinema?
Nice one. It's especially nice that it's in my house.
Yeah, we've got a new recording set up. For those who have been following us right from the start, will probably notice a few little fluctuations with the sound. We started off in Jim's wonderful garage with great sound. We then went to my home office, which is not quite set up properly for sound, but it's the best you can do in rented accommodation. And now we're here at Simon's gaff, and it's a lovely sound environment.
It does sound okay so far, so let's hope it comes out.
It sounds pretty good, so we hope that people listening are already enjoying the lovely, succulent sounds of our voices.
Dun 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 dun.
So straight away in with that iconic theme. So obviously, as we said in the intro, 1995's Mortal Kombat. So let's kick it off with, when did we first see this film, Si? When did you first see it?
I think it was somewhere during when I was in primary school.
So age appropriate then?
Yeah. What is the certificate of this
I think
movie?
it's a 15, so...
Okay, so got there like...
Yeah, not quite an 18, but
7 years early or something.
Yeah, something
probably.
like that.
And so I don't know, I'm terrible with maths, I'm not sure what year that would have been, but I remember that I had the VHS of it, and then I couldn't get enough of it, and then I lent it to you.
Well, that brings me on very nicely to my sort of like first experiences of it. Is I remember coming around yours for dinner, as you do in primary school, and I saw the sleeve of the VHS, and I saw that sort of dragon logo, because I don't think at that point either of us would have been playing the games. No, because they would have been. I mean, we say that the film's not age appropriate, but the games would have been well not age appropriate. So probably would have been like year 5, year 6. I would have thought.
I think we might have had this because we had Sega Mega Drive, me and Jacob, and it had Mortal Kombat 1 on. So I think we might have been playing that.
So you were a bit risky with your video. At that time, I know I wouldn't have been playing it. I don't think. It's hard to remember, but I don't think. I think the first time I played the games was when I remember getting on the PS1. Was the Mortal Kombat trilogy, the platinum version, which had like 1, 2, and 3 all into one game. So I can remember seeing that dragon logo, and I can remember you lending me the VHS. And this is a bit of a weird D-turn, but I remember taking it home and my dad picking me up and being like, "What's that you got there, son?" And I was like, "Oh, it's a video. Simon's just lent me a video." He's like, "Oh, what is it?" I was like, "It's called Mortal Kombat." And his sort of face grimaced a little bit, thinking like, "Okay, right." And long story short, I went to bed that night, and so this kind of tells you the kind of age that we probably were. I asked my dad to read the back of the blurb to me before I went to bed, which is a bit weird thinking about it now. But at the time, I was like, "Can you read the blurb on Mortal Kombat for me?"
It's like a bedtime story.
I was like, "Yeah." So that kind of tells you everything you need to know about the age that we were. So
I also remember not getting it back for like maybe 5 years or 2 years.
It was we done. It was quite interesting. I was clearing out some of my, like a couple of years ago, clearing out some of my old videos from my mum and dad's, and I found a copy on VHS of GoldenEye.
Oh, nice.
And literally going, I wonder, where did I actually get that? Thinking, because we didn't buy videos. The only videos that I brought were wrestling videos. And even and that was usually like presents and stuff like that. I was like, when did we buy that? And I asked my mum, and she was like, "Oh, that's such and such is." And it was basically one we borrowed from somebody, one of my mum's friends, and still have it now. So 5 years is quite a short time to lend it to me, considering we've had GoldenEye for about 25 years and not given it back.
Well, you've got my GoldenEye.
No, not your GoldenEye. It was one of my mum's friends.
Your mum's mate still, like, she's like, "I never saw that one. I did buy it."
Yeah, where did that go?
Went
we've
straight
got
from
it.
Thingy to Tomorrow Never Dies.
Yeah.
Well, also, I remember there was no love lost, that you had it, because I just remember thinking, "Oh, Ryan's got that."
I mean,
and it's good.
You do sound fairly bitter, if I'm being honest.
No, but I remember thinking, "Oh, Ryan's got that, and that's good because it's great."
Yeah, the first time I watched it, it was, as I say, we were probably a little bit too young, so it was a little bit kind of, we shouldn't be watching this, and so things felt a little bit more, not scary, because it's not really a scary film, but there was sort of like every now and again, like that opening scene with Shang Tsung, your brother's soul is mine, like that I was just like, that dude is that, I don't want to meet that dude. And even like into my teens, like I see that dude in stuff and I'm just like, Shang Tsung, get a bit of a shiver, because that's the first kind of experience of that actor, who's gone on to be in lots and lots of things, which we'll get onto. But so it was always a, and it's weird going into a film. Obviously, as I say, we were quite young, but weird going into a film based on a game where we haven't played the game. Like, obviously, nowadays that's more commonplace because they're mass marketed. But at the time, well, certainly for us, it was like we were into games, so how had we not played the game? And
I think I had played the game.
Well, okay. Well, I hadn't played the game.
But I don't know what came first. I'd have to consult my brother. But obviously, because I got an older brother, everything he did, I got to do. And you got an older sister, and I doubt she'd play Mortal Kombat. No,
I remember I really wanted her Barbie house to make into like an Action Man, like assault course thing. I did take her Mega Drive though, like similarly to what you were saying.
Fair,
but the games on there, like I remember there's a game called like Altered Beast, which is like a
power up.
Yeah,
power up.
Wow, that's a flashback.
Welcome to your doom. Oh no, rise from your grave.
Yeah. So it's a bit like a Mortal Kombat Street Fighter type knockoff, wasn't it? That was
it's very hard.
Yeah, I mean every game was harder when you were playing it in the old days.
There was like a level where there'd be like these little bubbly ball things that would jump on your head, and if they landed on your head, you're just jumping around and you couldn't do anything because you got this thing on your head. Like those I think they were so creative with stuff then. Like that I don't know if it's just because it's the glory days of me being a kid, but that really appealed to me. Like the characters in Mortal Kombat, they're so like they're so cool, I think.
They lend themselves quite well to being in a movie or being in a TV series and being in that medium, because they have that, you know, each character, like when you know, you complete the arcade, you know, on that character, you get the backstory. So it lends itself quite well. I think fighting games do lend themselves quite well to being made into movies.
Well, they should do, but not all of them.
So let's backtrack slightly and let's just cover the plot, because it's something that, you know, myself and Jim, we always used to forget, and we don't want to forget it here.
Okay.
So, and I probably should actually just say that, you know, this isn't a long-term replacement for Jim. Jim is wanting to come back into the Bury Our Bones with Cinema fold, but as a lot of people know, you know, having a newborn is very time-consuming, and I as also, you know, his daughter's uncle, and, you know, his wife is my sister, feel a little bit bad saying, yeah, sorry, can you put your daughter down? We want to do a podcast. It's not really going to fly very well. So,
and you'll be next anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's a different episode in and of itself. So the plot, okay. So based on the popular video game of the same name, Mortal Kombat, tells the story of an ancient tournament where the best of different realms fight each other. The goal, 10 wins to be able to legally invade the losing realm. Outworld has so far collected 9 wins against Earthrealm, and so it's up to Lord Raiden and his fighters to stop Outworld from reaching the final victory. Which, when you're 7, 8, 9, or however old we were, that's as much as we need to go. Even if we hadn't played the game or, you know, hadn't seen the cover, you hear that and you go, that sounds really cool. You know, fighting in the playground is what most boys used to do in their, in break time. So it sounds pretty cool. So that's, for me, is going, I want to watch that film. And even now, if I heard that, I'd be like, that sounds like a good film. Let's put that on, you know.
Yeah, the mystical island thing I always used to like about it, really. The fact they all go on that ship. I mean, you know, where's that boat going?
I like the fact that it's kind of, it is ominous and also ambiguous as to where it's going. Obviously, we know it's going to Outworld, but it doesn't, you know, it's not trying to fill our heads with all of this exposition. There is a bit of that in there, and there is that kind of sometimes a little bit too much. But at that point, it's not going, oh, to get to Outworld, you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do this. It's not like that. It's just, here's the boat that we have to get on to go to the tournament that takes you to Outworld. And with the smoky, you know, it is quite funny that it looks like a fairly modern dock, and it has like a really old, like looking like Chinese pirate ship. I mean, and nobody's going, what's going on with that ship?
Raiden explains to them like the plot of the movie, like what you just said. He reads out to them on that boat. That is
pretty much Raiden's role in the film, isn't it? He's like, oh, are you thinking this is a bit far fetched? I'm now going to come in and do some exposition just to keep you, you know, informed of what's happening and the rules of the film and etc. With a really unhinged, slightly psychotic and very enjoyable Christopher Lambert playing Raiden. Yeah, you know.
He does that at one point, doesn't he?
But there's a bit on the ship where he's like, he was talking to them about their destiny and not being ready, but if you're ready and to fight, you will save Earthrealm from Outworld's grasp. And then just stops and goes, sorry. And it's like, he's just like really sort of like doesn't really understand the situation he's in multiple. He's like, he's just randomly laughing with that sort of, you know, Sid James cackle he has in it. And I always remember him having a bigger part in it, but actually he's not in it that much. But when he is on screen, he kind of steals the show, because he is, as I say, slightly psychotic in places if you met that guy on the street, regardless of what he's actually talking about, the way he's saying things and his actions and his mannerisms, you'd be like, is he on ketamine or something?
Well,
you know?
I love that about Raiden in this. Watching it back a bit older, I feel like he's got like foresight, and he sort of knows what's going. I feel like he knows more than what he lets on, and I feel like he can laugh at stuff, whereas the other people are so caught up in their journey of like revenge. What's that? That's who's the revenge one?
Liu Kang. Liu Kang.
I guess.
Or Kang,
I guess Sonya in a way, even though he's...
Yeah, I mean...
There's a bit where he tells them what
what their worst kind of fear is, and what their... And one of the things that I kind of picked out straight away is in the first sort of like 10 minutes is you very clearly, from the three kind of like main characters, Liu Kang... Why do I keep saying Liu Kang? Liu Kang... Johnny Cage and Sonya Blade. Yeah, it's very clear what their motivation is straight away. Which in a 90s sort of bubblegum popcorn action movie, which isn't really it's not Daniel Day-Lewis and My Left Foot and all of that kind of motivations and what's my character thinking here and all in a monologue and all of that. It's not really that sort of movie, but it very quickly just tells you that here's their motivation, here's why they're doing it, here's everything that's kind of led up to that point, and it gives you that without it going without it being really sort of overboard with it. It's just a very quick sort of thing. Okay, Liu Kang is doing it because his brother's been killed by Shang Tsung. Johnny Cage is doing it because people don't think he can really fight because he's a movie star. Yeah. Sonya Blade is doing it because she's got a vendetta against Kano.
Kill my partner.
Yeah. So it's very, very clearly like sets that up really quickly and really easily without it feeling like too much too soon, which again feels like a very modern thing. I don't think a lot of movies were doing that at the time.
Yeah, and the set pieces for each character is cool, isn't it? Like it starts at Shang Tsung listens to camera and go, "You'll be next," or whatever, and Chan goes, "Ah!" and I wrote that down as a reverse Bruce Lee. Like Bruce Lee does the stomp on that guy and famously in Enter the Dragon.
Yeah.
But it's clever, I think, that first scene because it's the stomp from the victim point of view. Like it's from Chan's perspective, and he's going, "Ugh," while like Shang Tsung's like, oh, it's horrible. That bit, actually. As a kid, that really used to.
It sits with you. Like that's the first. Like it's always the thing. Like sometimes when you watch a film and you don't watch it for a while, you kind of forget bits and bobs about it. But as soon as I put it on, I was like, how does this start? I kind of forgot. And then as soon as I saw the temples, I was I know exactly how this starts. And I'm like, oh no. Liu Kang's brother like gets killed and
I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah,
plot,
it's like a really sort of like again, because he's kind of a throwaway character. His purpose there is to drive Liu Kang forward, but I felt really sorry for him at the same time, which is quite hard to do when you've got so little screen time. So it's. And as what we're kind of saying with all of the characters, their motivations are quite clear, but also their character and who they are is quite clear in those bits as well. Like Liu Kang is very much, running. They cover this, but very much running from his destiny, and so is trying to not be that thing that is meant for him. So he kind of doesn't really know who he is. Sonya Blade is very much rush in head first, proving that she doesn't need help. And then Johnny Cage is very much the wisecracker.
Where do you get these guys?
Yeah. This is the part where you fall down.
I love that.
I just remember watching that at the time. And again, because I've not played the game, or if I had played the games, it was very brief, so I didn't know all the characters. I was just like, at that point, I didn't know Johnny Cage was a movie star. And I suppose anybody who doesn't know the characters wouldn't know until that bit where everyone goes, cut, and then everybody comes in. So it's kind of like this is the part where you fall down. And it's very much even before the cut bit, it's quite a good line as well, because it's like the thing of, in those kind of movies where everybody's been taken out and there's one dude left, there's always a point where it's like they run away or whatever. So kind of subverting and go, this is the part where you fall down. I just really like that line.
That is good.
And then the cut happens and it kind of it then kind of develops that further and, where do you get these guys,
The Spielberg man. Like, there's that's great. It actually really looks like it.
And actually...
That's amazing.
it was supposed to be Spielberg.
Really?
So they actually wanted Steven Spielberg, and I think Steven Spielberg was like, yeah, I'll do that, but I think scheduling got in the way. So that's why it so closely kind of resembles him.
It's well good.
And I think there was even a point where they were going to have, like, on the back of the director's chair, it was going to say Spielberg. It was, like, really going to be that. And I think, funnily enough, in today's world, like, if you were to remake that movie, and I know obviously they've done a remake of Mortal Kombat in 2021. But if you were to remake that scene, you absolutely would have a famous director in there, because today's films tend to be quite meta and, pointing at the audience and wink, wink, nudge, 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 and, subverting, films within a film and that sort of thing. So it would kind of probably be Spielberg or, a David Fincher or a Tarantino or somebody like that if it was made today in that same structure.
I know what you mean. I get that. I do have one bit of trivia for you, or a question, because I was like, I can't even bother to Google it. But after Johnny Cage goes, Kurt, where'd you get these guys? And he walks over to that guy who is actually...
Oh, what, hit Master Boyd?
Yeah. Is he someone famous or something?
Yeah. Interestingly,
I knew you'd know.
Little bit of a spoiler for perhaps the next episode that we're going to be doing. He's actually in Dante's Peak.
What?
He's a very, very minor role in that, but he's in that. And the only reason I meant, not that that's his most famous role, it's not, but that just because that's what we're looking at next. But yeah, so he's in that. He's in. Let me have a look at my notes now. He's in quite a few things. Just trying to find bits and bobs that he's in. I don't actually think I've got it written down, but he's in quite a lot. He's a relatively, perhaps not so much over here, but he's always that supporting character. That kind of name.
Because he says like about 3 or 4 lines, and he even leaves an impact.
Yeah.
But because he's not in it again, is he?
And that's no. He's the only other time he's in it is when you see him walking away and he shifts into Shang, and we go, oh, he's not actually that dude. Yeah. And that you could have very easily as a director gone, oh, let's just put someone who nobody knows in that role, and it would have been fine. It wouldn't necessarily have stuck in your mind or anything like that. It would have been perfectly okay. But I think the fact that he does have a fairly recognisable or well-known actor in that role who's only in for that particular thing just adds that gravitas, because it then reinforces the character of Johnny Cage of having, Master Boyd, is a completely original
more
character.
For some reason.
Yeah, it's slightly more,
It's that guy from Dante's Peak.
Yeah, that you totally didn't pick up on.
Yeah,
but
somehow
we'll gloss over that. So, I mean, if we take, if we cast our minds back to 1995 and we look at the budget and the box office figures. So this was made on a budget of $18 million, which is about 14 million Great British pounds. And in today's inflation, with today's inflation, is about $37 million. So it's not a big budget movie, but it's not it's kind of in that kind of midwif area of not being a low budget movie, but not being a high budget movie. I think $80 million was quite a fairly standard kind of amount of money to use on a
not a B movie, but an A flat movie.
Yeah, like we refer to that now as an A flat movie. I like that. Not quite.
Yeah,
but on its opening weekend, it made back, so bearing in mind on an $18 million budget, it made back $23.2 million in its opening weekend. So before you've even, released it for a week or a month or whatever, you've already made your money back. You've made, $5 million profit. Once you take out marketing stuff and like that, that's a pretty decent return. Even some of the bigger budget movies we're looking, that we've covered in the past, they tend to make back, half or 3/4 of their budget straight away. But to make all of your budget and then, add a bit of profit on there as well is really, really good going. So that's about 80 million quid, about $47 million today. Domestically, in the US, it made $70 million. which is really, really good going. About 55 million in pounds and 145 million for adjusted for inflation today. Worldwide, it made 122 million, 96 million quid, or $251 million after inflation. So a very, very successful movie in terms of, how much it's made. And, I think it's always a good sign when you make quite a lot of money in your opening weekend and then you still make money beyond that point, because obviously what that means is that sometimes you get a film and it's released and it makes good money in its opening weekend, word of mouth starts to flitter out and you start to see actually not many other people came to see that post that point. So to actually get 70 million domestically, where Mortal Kombat was pretty big in America, obviously, but worldwide appeal is really good going, because that you're going to be making profit whatever you do at that point.
Yeah, fair.
So, and it's interesting because I think we obviously have this from a standpoint of it being quite nostalgic for us, but critically, it's not a very well kind of looked at movie, even amongst audiences ratings. It's not really probably where we hold it. As I say, I think it depends on when you see it, what age you were at, and kind of what memories you have that go, and which is true of any film. So if we look at IMDb rating of 5.8 out of 10, so usually what I would call decent movies are in the sixes, so just below decent, not terrible by any stretch, but not considered a decent movie by a lot. 47% Rotten Tomatoes score from the critics, so critics didn't tend to like it that much, and a 57% audience score from Rotten Tomatoes, so fans, again, similar kind of scores, weren't that necessarily that keen on it. If you look at Metacritic, kind of similar story, 60 out of 100 for Metacritic for critics, and then from a user rating, 7.9. So obviously the people going to Metacritic tend to like it a bit more. Now that doesn't necessarily mean, obviously I say this every time you mention those kind of ratings, doesn't mean that it's a bad movie because it's got a low score. It just means that critically and, audience perception tells you kind of a general kind of basis of where it's at, which I was quite surprised at, because I always thought it was considered quite not an amazing movie, but quite a well thought of movie. What was your?
I think it's well good, and I feel like I mean, what more could you want really? Because I don't like it when maybe if it was made, I haven't even watched the new one because I saw one clip of Goro chasing someone around that looked like a bit of a horror clip or something, and I'll tell you that there are probably two movies I don't care to watch in my lifetime, at least this time around potentially, is Mortal Kombat remake recently and Solo, that Star Wars movie. I'm not ever going to watch those two films. I don't think they're just on the list of no thanks, because I'm just really happy with this one. There are some bits in it that I think they could have done a bit better. For example, the romance they sort of shoehorned in with Johnny Cage.
It's very shoehorned in and glosses over.
It doesn't need to be in there. Really.
Yeah, and also it kind of at one point they're at each other's throats, and then feels like pretty much the next scene they're looking at each other kind of quite longingly, and it's a bit like, have we missed a whole Is it a deleted scene, or
I think
missed a whole?
It feels like that, doesn't it? It feels like there's some other scenes of them just before the beach, maybe having a little moment together. But I don't know. I like the fighting sequences in it. I like that once it's the plot's out the way, it just cuts from fight scene to fight scene to fight scene, pretty much.
Which, to be fair, is kind of what you want. It's, do you know what I mean? It's it doesn't. It doesn't shy away from what it is. It's a fighting game made into a movie. When I looked in the video game adaptations that that got it wrong in that episode. Street Fighter didn't have enough of those action sequences where you saw people fighting. It was very much a case of there was big set pieces where it was almost like an action film, but there wasn't like clearly defined, it's that fight with that character versus that character, which if you're going to do a fighting movie, especially one with quite strong characters or quite iconic characters, why are you not going to pit those people off against each other? And as I say, Mortal Kombat's not a perfect movie, but it does that and actually makes you go, oh, well, now I want to see the movie's version of Johnny Cage. I want to see him fight this character if they were to do a sequel or if it was to be part of a franchise. It sets a really good kind of foundation without going, oh, we've shown you everything that there is to do with Mortal Kombat. If there was a sequel, you wouldn't get anything more from it. Obviously, there is a sequel with Mortal Kombat Annihilation, which is...
Let's not talk about that.
I have a bit of a soft spot for it.
Okay, yeah, fair.
But I understand it's crap. But I like it because I think by that point, I had played the games. Yeah. And so the characters that I now were playing as when I play the games are now in that movie. So like Cyrax and Sector and those kind of characters. I was like, oh yeah, it's got them in it. And it, has Jax in a more fleshed out role. Okay, it's not played very well by the actor who plays it. But yeah. But anyway, that's getting onto the second film. With this film, I think it's, as I say, it sets up that solid foundation and it doesn't shy away from what it is.
No. It's also very simply, like the characters are simple in some, I think the best way, like they're kind of like archetypal roles, like the hero. There's like Katana is like a temptress type figure. Raiden is like the god, like mysterious one. There's a real clear villain, but there's a higher power working behind him, and they referred to there being something else behind it, which I love.
It hints at the Shang Tsung is just a cogging the machine, doesn't it?
So it hints at a bigger world, but it's set just with these ones, and that works. There's like Sonya Blade's story arc is quite cool with Kano, really. Although watching it back this time, I thought like there's quite a few pervy characters in this movie because it doesn't stop at Kano. It's also like
Johnny Cage is very much
Christopher.
Yeah.
Also, one quick question: I watched a video and the director talking about it. How do you say Christopher Lambert?
Christopher Lambert, isn't it?
Well, they seem to say Christophe Lambert.
Well, I mean, I know he's French-Canadian, which is why he always sounds like he's putting on a bit of an accent. Oh, yeah. Because he's
it's just acting.
But I think that brings us on quite nicely to the crew. So we mentioned it in the intro, but it was directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, which probably most people know him from doing the Resident Evil film, which again were covered in the video game adaptations that got it right in that episode. And actually, just whilst we're on mentioning those other episodes, this was actually going to be an episode that I was going to look at, in video game adaptations that got it right. But then we got into discussions and we decided to bring you on board and talk about it because it's quite as probably you can tell anybody listening now, it's quite a nostalgic kind of thing that we share between us. But he's, Paul W.S. Anderson has also done things like Event Horizon, which is a fantastic film.
That movie that makes him, because he's done that, he's good. It puts
you in a fairly good place as a director. I mean, he did do Alien versus Predator.
I know that he's done more bad ones.
Yeah, he's done. He tends to do a lot of video game adaptations. Actually, he's done Monster Hunter.
I've not seen it because it doesn't look very good.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's married to Mila Jovovich, which is why she crops up in a lot of his movies. But certainly, I would say pre-2004 that Paul W.S. Anderson is a pretty decent director. Obviously you've got Mortal Kombat, which some of you can take it or leave it, but we think is a great film. You've got Event Horizon, which is probably one of the most underrated horrors of the 90s. It's so good. And it's not perfect as well. There's a couple of characters in there you could do without, but it's so good. And I don't think enough people have seen it and talk about it. I think it's kind of, I'm not going to say it's forgotten, but people, put it this way, if you say Event Horizon to anybody and they have seen it, they go, "Oh my God, I love that film." If they haven't seen it, they go, "I've never heard of that." It's not really one that loads of people seem to have heard of, to be totally fair. But it used a script that was written by Kevin Droney, which his notable work was a film called Wing Commander in '99, which is a very 90s, very, very much a 90s film.
What do you think about the script? Because obviously for me, and I don't know if it's just because I was young watching this, but I remember a lot of the lines. And is it easy to make those catchphrase movies? Because when you watch like a more of a worse Marvel movie, to me, a lot of the jokes don't land, and there's a lot of things they say that I couldn't remember. But you know, in this movie, pretty much, it's I don't know. For me, like it sort of lands, and the sort of catchphrasiness of it, I like. Like, where do you get these guys? This is the part where you fall down. This is the part where you fall down. You know,
I think it's very much a soundbite script, isn't it? Where you can take out a line, you know, here, there, and everywhere, and it sounds good on its own. Yeah. It almost feels like it. Oh, I've got a great idea for a line in a movie. Let's put it in this, rather than let's create a script and let's have. You know, not that I'm saying it doesn't all fit together, but it's not, you know, it's not the same type of script as, say, something like Goodfellas, where everything everything kind of intertwines and everything is interwoven, and it's very, you know, a very strong script. I think here it's very much, as I say, soundbite, and you can take there are bits in it that do kind of fall a little bit flat. That don't quite hit, and I think it kind of all depends on who's saying the line. So one of the things I mentioned was that having Shang Tsung say things like fatality, flawless victory, that is the best choice they could have made, because it kind of fits with his character, because he's kind of overseeing the tournament, and it fits and it kind of makes sense when he says it. The only time it doesn't is when at the end, where Liu Kang kills Shang Tsung and then says flawless victory. It feels a bit like a eye roll moment, a little bit.
Oh, because I feel like by that point in the movie, he's sort of should be doing it for the right reasons. Anyway, he wouldn't just say that.
At that point, it becomes...
What could he have said from all the other catchphrases?
Well, he could have said...
That's the part where you... Or could have cut to Johnny Cage. That's the part where you fell down.
Well, they use that twice, don't they?
Yeah,
Which I think is a good... Right. I think that's a good nod back.
Yeah. Okay.
And it does... That fits with Johnny Cage's character, because he's a movie star, and it's the, you know... In movies of that kind of ilk, you kill someone or you get rid of somebody, and then you say a quick pithy one-liner, so it fits with Johnny Cage. I don't think it fits with Liu Kang's character. Yeah. I don't think he needs to necessarily say anything at that point. I think a lot can be done with audience filling in the blanks. I think it's almost, and I think that's probably the part where things do tend to fall down a little bit, is where it's almost over. So like one of the things I said is the scene where Liu Kang is fighting Sub-Zero, and they've done that bit where it's like
use the element that
brings life. Which I mean, why she wouldn't just say use water?
Yeah, but she's already told him on the sand beach fight.
So we can deal with that. But to say it again is a bit like, well, we don't need to hear it again. We can work it out. And then you also don't need Liu Kang to say water. We don't need him to say that either. We can fill in the blanks. I think that's where it's kind of gone a bit too much in terms of knowing when to say stuff and when not to say stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, and I think on the whole,
it's what's funny though is, as a kid, I honestly remember thinking, what's the element that brings life? What's the element that brings life? Like, Liu Kang.
So they made it for people who were watching it when they were in primary school.
Yeah, but it still wasn't enough until he picked up the water for me, I don't think. So, but yeah, I get that. I think there's maybe, I guess that moment, stood out as definitely, you don't need to keep saying
So it was produced by Lawrence Kasanoff, who probably most notably worked on True Lies and Strange Days. So Strange Days is a great film. Ralph Fiennes and Angela Bassett. True Lies is also a great film as well. So experienced in his production. He also worked on Platoon as well as an uncredited production manager. So, experienced producer.
I think he
there.
might be what's his name again?
Lawrence Kasanoff.
I don't know for sure, but I think it might have been the producer that's the reason why the next movie is bad and why a lot of the people didn't carry over from the first one.
Possibly.
I don't know if it's him, but I think there was like a clash of visions. Like, I think that I watched this interview with the director, and they all seem to be quite chummy now, maybe doing like Comic Con type Mortal Kombat equivalents. I don't know what that is, but and they said that, like, that director, the Anderson dude, he sort of understood the vision that the movie has got to be a bit different from the games, otherwise people won't like it or go see it. And then I think the next movie kind of is more like the games in a way, and it's not as good.
And I think it's knowing that you're working with different mediums, isn't it? It's knowing that, because, when you're playing a game, you have a lot more time. Obviously different games is different anyway, but you have a lot more time to fill in the blanks, and for actually the audience to fill in the blanks and do their own kind of stuff and all of that. So I think it's knowing when to do what and what to do and all of that kind of stuff. But it was interesting, there was an interview with him, I think it's Lawrence Kasanoff, the producer, where he had a clear kind of, as you say, he had a clear vision of wanting to make a movie that was like the Hong Kong kind of martial arts movies that were around in sort of like the 80s and early 90s. And he's actually does get slightly racist with what he says, because he basically says that, a lot of the action scenes in Hong Kong movies are great, but the stories are usually not very good. And it's like, well, I don't think that's particularly true. Maybe it's just the ones you've watched, mate.
Yeah.
But he basically said he wanted to make a Western film that had that kind of Hong Kong kind of action martial arts kind of influence, but with a Westernized script and that sort of thing. To me, it feels like a fairly kind of Far East movie anyway.
Yeah.
It just has obviously a lot of, Western, American, English actors in there. So it kind of comes across there. We've got to mention George S. Clinton, the composer, who, like, it's really difficult to create music for an already existing, like, thing and have it feel a part of that world and it not feel like it's just a new version of that.
Yeah.
Because everything, almost obviously, you've got the iconic dun 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 dun, which is perfect for to go over any fight scene. But even like the music, kind of when they're at Shang Tsung's temple and all of those kind of subtle pieces where, if you're looking for them, you hear them, but they're just accompanying what we're seeing on screen. Everything feels like Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
Feels like you stick the disc in the console, you'd start the game up, and it would have that type of music. It feels very much a part of that world, which is quite hard to achieve, really.
Yeah. I was thinking you could put the music on, the movie on in a club, and there wouldn't be that much downtime for people not dancing.
Yeah.
I mean, because once you get to like the fight bit, there's like generally good music the whole time. I think it's it really adds to the whole vibe of the movie, really, and I think that's probably one of the strong things about this film.
Yeah, and
soundtrack.
I often think that there's kind of two versions in my mind of a good soundtrack. A good soundtrack is one where you really notice it, and then another version or another example of good is when you completely don't notice it because it just seems at one with what you're seeing on screen. It complements it perfectly. The worst kind of stuff is where it feels out of place and feels totally disconnected from what you're watching. I think this falls into the first category of as soon as you see that New Line Cinema logo come up with Mortal Kombat and that music kicks in, it's so 90s. Like, if you put it this way, if you made, like they did in 2021 when they remade Mortal Kombat, you put that music over the opening titles of that Mortal Kombat, and it doesn't work because it's such a different it's such a different time in how we make movies now. So it's so of its time, but so good at the same time. You know, could you make that film and have that music any other time than in mid-90s?
No.
I don't think you could. It's very, you know, it has that, you know, techno rave kind of influence, which probably lends itself quite well to the market of the film in terms of who's going to see it, because you probably have people, you know, early 20s who are going to raves, who are playing Mortal Kombat in their spare time. So it kind of fits. They kind of knew exactly what they were doing and were like, more than anything, the first thing I think about when I think of Mortal Kombat is somebody shouting Mortal Kombat followed by that music.
Well, you say somebody, but the Mortal, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole with this. The guy that shouts that Mortal Kombat, there's two guys. There was like an advert in the 90s when they were selling the game. I don't remember which game it was, and it had that shout. It was like a load of people in a American city.
It was an advert that was called Mortal Monday, wasn't it, or something?
And there's a teenage boy that goes, Mortal Kombat! Who's like the leader of this load of big pack of, you know, people, like, and he's shouting for Mortal Kombat, and then there's this other guy's voice that goes Mortal Kombat, and I think that's the one they soundbite for that track, and that's the one that's at the beginning of the movie, I think. But what's really crazy is the guy that is the younger teenager who goes Mortal Kombat. It's like he does like cameos, like, you know, like cameo where you can like buy someone to like say happy birthday. Like Christina got Ben Fogle to say happy birthday to her nan the other day, so you can buy like a cameo. This guy that does the high Mortal Kombat, like he does cameos and says, you know, Mortal Kombat, you know, happy birthday, on the Mortal Kombat voice guy. But, you know, I'd argue that maybe that he's not the one everyone thinks it is, because the Mortal Kombat, yeah, fair play to him. He's obviously, you know, really cool guy, and oh god, I feel a bit bad for even have said that, to be honest. But I think the one from the one me and you imagine in our head, I think is this other guy, and there's an interview of him. I can't remember his name now. I probably did write it down somewhere, but if you just type, you know, if you just go on YouTube and try and find the original Mortal Kombat voice, I think you'll probably come to the same conclusion I found, that it was actually this other guy who's also in the advert that goes Mortal Kombat, and he said he was paid like he doesn't get royalty for that. He took like a couple of grand or something. He was in the studio doing lots of Mortal Kombats all day, and then, but I think he just said he's really happy that they used his voice.
Yeah, unfortunately, that tends to be like, you know, quite a common thing where somebody's voice will get used for like a very small thing, like in this with Mortal Kombat, and they get paid a one-off fee. It then goes viral, or it then goes, you know, into the stratosphere, and they're not fairly well compensated. So I can understand that other dude doing cameo, because it's like, well, people, you know, maybe they're getting confused, but essentially, you know, making money off of the thing that everybody kind of knows you for is kind of makes sense, really, doesn't it?
And also there is talk that they maybe took some people in the YouTube comments said like maybe it was the other guy, but they pitched his voice down, because it does sound a bit weird.
I mean, in my head it almost sounds like they've put two voices together to create, because there is like
that sounds like a compromise. I think it's both of them. I reckon.
That's not just me sitting on the fence, only because there is that kind of low type voice, but then there is like a higher element to it as well. Maybe I am just like, you know, trying to give that guy his fair dues.
In any case, both on that advert even now is epic to watch. It's a really cool advert. The Mortal Kombat, it's really epic. So
again, so 90s, isn't it?
Yeah,
they just don't make like adverts for anything really like that anymore. It's very much, I can't remember the last time I watched a video game advert and gone, that makes me want to buy the game because it looks so cool. It feels so organic, cool, rather than it's trying and, you know, oh, look how cool we are, that kind of, you know, that kind of viewpoint on things. But yeah, George S. Clinton's come up with that score, which is, again, what we said earlier, it's something that we pick out all the time when we think about it. It's something it's one of the, if it's not the first thing, it's the second or third thing that we go, oh yeah, remember Mortal Kombat from 95, you'll either go, oh yeah, I remember this, and it's usually the music.
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun,
I think that, John R. Leonetti was the cinematographer. He'd worked on things like Poltergeist, The Mask, The Conjuring. So again, established filmmaker in his own right. I think, the way things are shot, I think is quite a subtle... no, I don't think anybody's going to be coming out of this and going, the cinematography is out of this world. But I think there's some definite shrewd decision-making going on there, because it doesn't feel like they're using too much camera trickery. They obviously will be in certain elements, but it doesn't feel like that. Whereas sometimes you can watch things and go, I know exactly how that's done, because it's incredibly obvious how it's done, or it's almost showing you too much to give away how things are done. It doesn't feel like that here. Like, a standout is the with Robin Shou, who played Liu Kang, doing the run up the wall and backflip behind, I think it's Sub-Zero. No, Reptile, sorry.
That's a good fight.
Yeah, that's a great fight.
I think that might be
well.
one of my favourite ones. From
but him running up the wall and doing a backflip over Reptile, him doing that, he actually done that. And so it's a shrewd person to go, well, I'll just film that then, rather than, because other people would go, oh, I'll film it from this angle, and then I'll jump to this angle, and I'll do this, and I'll do that. And that has, the editor, Martin Hunter, has some kind of input on that as well, because you could very easily, as I say, cut here, cut here, cut here, all through those fight scenes. And then they feel very much like, and it's, a bit of a strange kind of tangent, but like the Liam Neeson Taken type films that we see today, where everything's really close in, it's really quickly jump cut to make everything look like it's super quick, like your Jason Bourne, that sort of stuff. Whereas it doesn't do that here. It just kind of says, well, let's just use the martial artists that we've got, let's just let them shine, and we'll capture what they're doing.
When it's Luke Kang, it definitely shines.
Yeah.
I think he in general, the casting in the movie is just great, and I feel like because there's an interview of him I saw, and he said that he said, what did he say? Oh my god, he thought like doing an American movie, I don't know if he meant to go easy on him, but he said, it should be really nice and stuff. But he said it was quite, they worked him quite hard. Like they'd be like, oh, can we just do that whole shot again, but we're going to capture it from this angle instead, or we're going to do it like this. And it was like, oh, we'll just do a little bit. But I think, they wanted him to do the whole take again of the whole fight sequence. So I think they obviously had a lot of footage of it. And I know that just before they were going to shoot the movie, they got cut $3 million from the budget or something. And then when they showed the test team, people that watched the movie back, they said it just needs more fights in there. I think they got the money back in the movie, and then they went and reshot the whole of... I don't know for certain, but I think, the Johnny Cage and Scorpion fight, they shot a bit of the fight in Thailand. I think the tree sequence, they didn't have enough and they needed more. So I think then they shot a whole new fight scene for it. And I guess it might be that scaffold bit. And
that feels very much like that's a fight scene that's going to use a lot of budget. There's a fair bit of special effects in there. There's a couple of locations. There's quite a bit of visual kind of stuff going on. Whereas the Sub-Zero, and mind you, that's got special effects. But some of the other fights...
Sub-Zero one is actually not that great, is it? Because they have a little fight, and then he goes into sort of mage mode, and he raises that big bubble, and it's just like, just hit him while he's in power up mode. Hit him, just punch, like a video game. Just hit him whilst he's making that ball thing, and he's like, use the element that brings life. But I think that, how do you feel about when Johnny Cage goes through that portal though, and then Scorpion goes, welcome? Do you think that's one of those lines that just...
I think generally speaking, anything with Goro is... I remember...
Scorpion. When he goes to the portal and he goes, welcome. Sorry.
Yeah. Scorpion's dialogue is terrible. Throughout the whole film. The only line people want to hear Scorpion say is, get over here. And he does that.
And then he goes,
and then,
get down here.
Get down here. Like, nobody wants that. It's the lamest thing in the movie where anybody who's played the game will be rolling their eyes. And anybody who hasn't played the game will just be like, that's a bit of a weird thing to say. Get down here. It just literally doesn't fit at all.
It almost makes the get over here less impactful once he's saying, get down here, welcome. I can't think of the other ones he says, but he does say a few more.
And I think, that old adage, less is more, I think could probably be used in a couple of instances in this movie.
You could be forgiven for thinking you're listening to a Spaniard ordering a beer on the Costa del Sol. You can almost feel the sun beating down on his bullfighting cape. But what you were actually listening to was me, Sean Connery, displaying just one of the many accents that you two can master at the Sean Connery Dialect School for Actors. Now let me transport you to a Cold War-era Russian submarine with flawless Russian dialect. This is my boat now, Captain Phillips. That was magic. You can learn this and many more at the Sean Connery Dialect School for Actors. Here end of the lesson.
As we mentioned earlier, we've got Christopher Lambert playing Lord Raiden, who's most well known for Highlander. We've got Robin Shou playing Liu Kang, who was also in Beverly Hills Ninja. We've got Lyndon Ashby playing Johnny Cage. We've got Kari Hiroki Tagawa playing Shang Tsung. I apologise if I've got that wrong. He's also in Licence to Kill, the James Bond movie in 1989.
I don't remember that. But
Big Trouble in Little China. So a very much a go-to Chinese actor. As I say, he's been in an awful lots of things. Depends on when you first see him, but for me, he'll always be, it's Shang Tsung.
You know what? I've not that long ago watched Big Trouble in Little China, and I remember thinking,
it's a great movie. We've got Bridget Wilson playing Sonya Blade. Probably before this, people would have most known her from Last Action Hero, another great movie. Bit of a flop, but a great movie. We got Talisa Soto playing Kitana, who again was also in Licence to Kill. So Shang Tsung and
that's interesting.
Kitana were both in Licence to Kill, so maybe a little Mortal Kombat reunion, Licence to Kill reunion there for them. We've got Trevor Goddard playing Kano, who I think is great, and we don't really see enough of him.
He dies pretty quick.
He
is a bit gross. The banquet scene's quite good.
I think it works for Kano because he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
That's part of Kano being a bit sleazy. We can kind of understand why Sonya Blade hates him, other than him being a criminal as well, because he's in your face, he's gropey, he's un-PC. I kind of get that, but I also think it's kind of a testament of the time of when the film was made, whereby that's kind of how people were in movies at that time. And same with like Sonya Blade's character. One of the first things I said when she gets captured is, why do they style her hair?
She looks great.
Well, yeah, exactly.
What I thought of was Dr. Evil going, do you like the outfits I made you, Powers? Like when, because she's just got this brand new outfit in and her hair's done. And it's like, fair play, Shang Tsung. He's, I guess that's... he would. Was it the people in the robes, the stylists?
It just doesn't.
Why does he start? Yeah,
it's just one of those things where they wouldn't have done that if that was Johnny Cage. They would have just had him in his usual get up or clothes, and him be look like he's been captured. They could have done a similar thing, just have him whatever she was wearing and it looked like it's been torn or whatever it may be. It's just one of those things where in 2024 it kind of stands out as being one of those things of like, of course the female's made to look a bit more prettier or a bit more.
It feels like it's like a hark back to older movie, like Flash Gordon or something. I feel like at that point the movie goes full on sort of camp mode in a way, by the time they get to
the third act isn't great. By that point I think it's built up enough goodwill that it's not totally terrible, but the third act needs a bit of work in places, I think. But just finishing off the cast list, we've got Chris Casamassa playing Scorpion, we have Francois Petit playing Sub-Zero, and we have Keith Cook playing Reptile. And Francois Petit is kind of a well-known French martial artist and actor. And I think, again, having those characters be martial artists and not use stunt doubles or not use really works. Because with those characters, they do wear a mask for the majority of the film, and their characters wear masks anyway, so you can get away with that. I think, obviously, the casting of Liu Kang was, again, really good because you've got to have that. Obviously he's based on Bruce Lee. You've got to have that good martial artist who looks like the part and who can act. And people will probably debate whether or not he can act. I think he does his job fairly well there.
I think he's perfect. I think he is good. I feel like he brings me like Luke Skywalker energy of like, I think he sort of pushes it along, and I don't know what it is watching it this time, but I actually really, and I think I remember even as a kid, I think I actually buy him and his brother. Like at the end when his when Chan floats out of the whirlpool of spirits, and he goes, "I will see you again." And I sort of buy that. I know this movie is crazy and it's silly and it's got larger than life characters and it's just a fighting game movie at the end of the day, obviously. But I actually buy that he cared about his brother for some reason. I think it's because he did a good job with the acting.
Yeah, and I think it's also important to have those elements that ground it in element of reality, because if it was all completely off the wall, completely crazy stuff, by the end of it we'd be going, what have we just watched? But having those elements where pretty much where it grounds the characters, so we go, as I say, what I was saying earlier about motivations, and having those relationships that feel, as you say, quite real, and they, as you say, you buy that relationship between Liu Kang and his brother. Is it Chan? Sorry. That kind of that makes sense, and it feels natural. It doesn't feel forced, unlike the romances that you mentioned earlier, which again I think is part and parcel of Hollywood movies. If you're going to have a female and a male lead, or two leads that are of the opposite sex, you're probably at that point in Hollywood you're going to have that romance.
I mean, at least they got together. In Star Wars, there was like the new ones. There was like 3 movies like teasing a relationship with like Rey Skywalker,
and then they just totally forgot about it.
And they forgot about it after 3 movies. So in a way, well done for the beach scene. Yeah, 10 points for the beach scene.
And it's interesting because actually that's become a plot point and a story arc and a character arc that's actually cropped up in later games. And I don't know if I don't think it was in Mortal Kombat 1, 2 or 3, which were the ones that had come out at that by the time the film had, whatever games that had come out prior to the movie. I don't think that was an element that was in the games. I think it came from the movie and then it just made its way into the games. Much like it was interesting with Kano. I know we mentioned him earlier. So the actor is actually English, and he has that sort of almost fake, Cockney accent.
Where is he from?
He's English.
Okay, is Kano supposed to be Australian?
Here's the thing. So beforehand, it wasn't really discussed where he was from in the games. They cast
subterranean levels, the underworld. Is that like subterranean? Is that like the underworld?
Sonia Black. And when they cast Trevor Goddard, they liked his accent, but they thought he was Australian and not, obviously, to an English ear. I always thought he was Australian based on further iterations of the game, but actually he's just doing an English accent.
Yeah, in this movie, I was like, is he Australian?
But he's not. It's just because the American ear thought he was Australian, so they basically made the character Australian throughout the whole series. So it's very similar there, and I think that's what they've done with Sonya Blade and Johnny Cage, but becoming a romantic item, and then I think later on having Cassandra Cage.
Cassie Cage.
Cage, yeah. So it's interesting having those elements where the film influences the game in later iterations. And I think, we were mentioning earlier about like stunts and stuff like that. And Bridget Wilson was also somebody who done a lot of her own stunts as Sonya Blade. And just across the board, everybody kind of, it looks very much like they're doing their own stunts, which... Not that I've ever watched a film and, there are some times when you go, well, that's clearly not that dude or that actor, that's clearly a stunt double. But having those main actors be able to do the things that you're asking them to do is just such a subtle thing where you're not thinking, you don't have to worry about, we can't get too close in with this shot because then you'll see it's not that person. So it does give you that option to be able to, we can do
like a longer shot of it or
a longer
something.
shot. We don't have to edit it and splice and do all of these things to hide all of those, things. But, a prominent element of Bury Our Bones with Cinema is casting and would-be castings. So we almost didn't have Bridget Wilson in the role of Sonya Blade. We could have had Christina Applegate, who I most notably know her as Rachel's sister from Friends.
What's her name, Ryan?
Christina Applegate.
Christina Applegate.
Nothing that a little Google won't do.
So I don't really know who that is, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that would have worked. I haven't really seen anything with Christina Applegate where she is doing that kind of fairly physical kind of stuff. I think it's interesting because you get to know the person in that film, and so you can't really see anything else.
She's Sonya Blade for me, and and I feel like
when they recast her in the second one, it doesn't feel right, does it?
No, and. Well, here's a funny one, because I was watching Wimbledon like a long time ago, and then it pans the audience like, there's like Prince William or something. Yeah. And it panned to Pete Sampras, and next to him was Sonya Blade, and I was like, that's Sonya
she's married
Blade.
to Pete Sampras. Yeah.
I was like, So he's sporty, she's obviously still sporty, and she was a great casting for a character.
And she read an audition for the part. Quite a few times, and basically rejected it due to the long kind of casting process, and chose to do Billy Madison with Adam Sandler. And so they then decided to look at other people like Christina Applegate. Another name that was mentioned was Cameron Diaz. So kind of fairly big names.
I cannot imagine Cameron Diaz's, but I would like to know what it would have been like, because it might have been
it's always
better.
One of those good kind of wonderings of going, what would it be like? I think obviously this would have been post The Mask, so she was starting to get in the spotlight
when they're a bit too
more
famous. Would it bring the movie down because it would look like, that was that bad movie that Cameron...
It's almost
Cameron Diaz was in
Mortal Kombat? It's stunt casting, isn't it? It's going, let's just cast that person because they're a name, rather than let's cast them because they're right for the character.
Yeah.
Another name that was kind of thrown about, which I don't... At that time, Sharon Stone.
Okay, yeah, fair.
So
I could see that one a lot more.
I could see
because isn't she in Total Recall?
She's in Total Recall.
And she's sort of a similar type of character.
Obviously, Basic Instinct is probably what she's most well known for.
I think that would have been just the same. That would have been really good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think she would have been great, actually. And I would have been
certainly
surprised
has that more, that kind of... And as I say, I don't think Bridget Wilson is a bad piece of casting, but there are elements where I don't totally 100% buy her as being a special ops agent.
I buy the special ops bit until Shang says she's got the back of her hair and walks off of her through a portal, because it's just like, hold on a minute, we've already seen she knows what she's doing, and then And I don't honestly think it's her fault of why we don't buy her. I think she's undermined towards the end of the movie because they're like, you, Sonia, you need to learn how to trust. Christopher Lambert or whatever, he says, you need to learn how to trust. And then, 5 minutes later, like, she's been taken through a portal by the back of the ponytail. Yeah, I think that scene, if they just captured her in a more elaborate way, or that he had to, like, it was, if it was just a bit more, that scene was better. It feels like cuts in.
It feels a bit like a we run out of budget sort of situation, which happens quite a lot.
How did CGI portal?
But I mean, Sharon Stone, I could see working. Christina Applegate, not so much. Interestingly, moving on to the role of Scorpion, so we obviously had Chris Casamassa playing what we saw on screen, but voice-wise was actually voiced by co-creator of Mortal Kombat, the video game, Ed Boon.
Oh, nice.
So if anybody recognises that, kind of makes sense. So in the role of Liu Kang, we have Jason Scott Lee, who played Bruce Lee in Dragon, the Bruce Lee story.
Wait, who's Jason Scott Lee doing this movie?
He was considered for the role of Liu Kang.
Oh, sorry. Okay, yeah.
Which kind of makes sense. He's played Bruce. I don't know if I can't remember when Dragon, the Bruce Lee story, came out, but he was at some point he played Bruce Lee, which is what Liu Kang is kind of based on.
Yeah, fair.
So it kind of makes sense there. People we have like Russell Wong, Dustin Nguyen, Keith Cook, who actually ended up playing Reptile, was considered as well. But ultimately, they ended up going with Robin Shu, who did have a lot of experience in those Hong Kong martial arts movies. So it kind of fits in with that, that what I was saying earlier with the producer going, I want a Hong Kong influence.
To be fair, Christina, when I watched this, Christina, my girlfriend, we watched it, and then the moment he wakes up from that bad dream at the beginning, she's like, his hair's good, isn't it? Like, he has very cool hair.
It's got some volume in it.
Yeah, and then, there's a point in the movie where Shang Tsung has some really good hair, and then maybe that's just foreshadowing the obvious, Sonya Blade hairdo.
Well, yeah.
Maybe it was all, maybe they put enough in there for it to be like, why was she
the
not?
director said, right, we're going to have 3 different points where people are going to have big hair, and it's really going to represent this. I don't think that's probably what they were doing, but that, funny enough, you should say that, but that was one of the things I thought was, for that whole movie, Robin Shu's hair just looks great. It's such a, it feels very 80s rather than 90s. It feels like you can see him in that, that big hair was a big thing in the 80s. So for the role of Johnny Cage, kind of makes sense as to why they would go with this name, because apparently Johnny Cage is based off of this person. So Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Yeah, that's the one.
So that's kind of the big one there. He actually chose to do Street Fighter instead.
I've heard that, and
so
that's
you take a left turn and you end up with Street Fighter. You take a right turn, you end up with Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
And I think people may not be totally on board with Mortal Kombat, but people are definitely not on board with Street Fighter. It is a far inferior film.
I'm so glad though that we got the Johnny Cage that we got, and
Lyndon
it wasn't
Ashby,
John. Yeah,
really underrated actually.
Yeah,
he fits that role kind of perfectly. Haven't actually seen him in anything else other than this. I think he does do quite a lot of TV, American TV and stuff like that. But if we, from what we know about his time on Street Fighter with Jean-Claude Van Damme and his, his crippling cocaine addiction, if he'd have been in Mortal Kombat, you may be saying the same things that you say about Street Fighter about Mortal Kombat, because he's going, well, we could never really get Jean-Claude Van Damme to do the fight scenes because he was always in his trailer high on coke or whatever it may be. So actually, you put one name in something else, and that suddenly the film that everybody hates, it could be that. So, I feel like they kind of dodged a little bit of a bullet there.
I think for me, I can't see it any other way. Like with those main, I feel like some of them are interchangeable for other people, but I do feel generally that Liu Kang, Sonya Blade, Johnny Cage, and Shang Tsung are
Yeah,
staple.
they're
Like, I feel
the
like they're
pillars of the movie, aren't
Yeah,
they? I think you get one of those characters wrong or one of those castings wrong, the whole movie falls down.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Hiroyuki Tagawa playing Shang Tsung, as I've mentioned earlier, he just is Shang Tsung, and he has that gravitas about him, which I hadn't seen him really properly in anything prior to that. Obviously, we know he'd done License to Kill, and he'd obviously been in Big Trouble in Little China and other things as well. But he has that gravitas about him where he adds an element. You know, for example, if Shang Tsung feels like a bit of a wimp or feels like he's not this big sorcerer who has a lot of power, if he doesn't feel like that, it doesn't work. The rest of it going, well, why don't you just kick him in the head?
Yeah.
You know, whereas it doesn't feel like that because you go, well, yeah, you can fight him, but Shang Tsung is a master manipulator and he can do all of these things, you know, like what he does with, you know, manipulating Johnny Cage to actually go into the tournament to begin with, you know, cropping up in Liu Kang's dreams to get him to go into the tournament, you know, paying off Sonya Blade to get her into the tournament. He's like he's the puppet master of everything.
Yeah, he's
So
cool.
you get him wrong, it falls apart. You get Johnny Cage wrong, it falls apart. You certainly get Liu Kang wrong, it falls apart. And I think the same with Sonya Blade. So having those roles, I think you could probably, because Raiden has such a like removed role. He's kind of there. He's there for the audience, as I was saying earlier. He's there to tell you the rules of Mortal Kombat. He's there to basically say, well, this is your destiny. You can remove him from the whole story and it kind of still works. But yeah, Cary Hiroyuki Tagawa was the filmmaker's first and only choice for Shang Tsung. And
Wow.
that's, you know, to get your first choice is a luxury. And I think it benefits the film so much. You know, it's such a...
It shows they had quite a clear vision for it, though.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like a lot of films I don't like are films that you hear all smashed together last minute. And, you know, you throw... And sometimes it can make something good out of that. But I feel like this... It does know what it is. It knows where it wants to be. It knows it doesn't take itself too seriously. I think these are all the reasons why I like the movie. A big part of it is the casting. I just feel like they set out to do something, and I think they managed to do it the best they possibly could in a way.
Yeah.
Like, because I think if you make anything, like, it's never going to be quite how you expect. So I feel like they got about 85% for what they wanted, maybe, and that's fine.
I don't, you know, I always preface when we talk about bad films or when you talk about good films. I don't think anybody sets out to make a bad film. There's obviously just extenuating circumstances that get in the way or prevent people from doing so, or whatever it may be. So I don't think it's that, but I think, as you say, having that clear vision, and actually Paul W.S. Anderson, for, you know, he's made he's since made, I think, 3 video game movies. 2 of them are very good. Resident Evil, covered it in an episode before, is a very good film that has its clear vision. And something that film does, and this film does as well, is it takes enough from the video games to feel like it's the same thing, but then does its own thing as well. So it doesn't feel like it's just ripping off what you've already seen. So it kind of can stand on its own 2 feet, and it doesn't ever really feel like it's just, oh, if you haven't seen Mortal Kombat, you won't know what this is about.
And
you know,
I think it helps that Mortal Kombat has this. You know, it helps that this movie is a bit like Enter the Dragon. Do you know what I mean? It helps that they go to an island. There's it has enough that it has, because it can just follow this loose Enter the Dragon story.
You've got the skeleton of the narrative already there.
And all these components fit around that quite nicely, and it doesn't ever get too convoluted, really. But, you know, they're not messing around in Outworld too much. They go there at the end, you know, or whatever.
They never overstay their welcome on screen with anything. Like, one of the things I thought was that when obviously they're going through the tournament, I thought all the fight scenes, just when I thought, well, this is getting a bit too easy, they're flipping through the characters. They kill off Kano, they get Goro out of the way, they get Sub-Zero, Scorpion out of the way relatively easily, and then Sonya Blade gets captured. Okay, it's done in a slightly hokey way, but as soon as I started to think that, it then switched and it done something different.
Yeah.
So it was kind of it, you know, as I say, it didn't overstay its welcome. It kind of knew when to move on things and when to do something a bit different.
Saying before that though, they kind of are doing well, but then Art Lee loses to Goro.
Yeah, that's the...
Which is... so how do you feel about him as a character? Because we haven't even spoken about him.
Yeah,
which is,
it's a bit of a weird one, because I presume he's from Earth.
Yeah, I think he's just an Earth Realm fighter.
Which I'm a bit like... Why? Why is he there? I thought they were the Earth Realm fighters. He's just somebody that
I think there's loads of Earth Realm fighters because they all go to Goro, don't they? So there's loads of them there, not just our main ones, but we're following our main ones because these are the ones.
Fair enough, yeah.
But Art Lee's there and he's supposed to be really good too, but they need someone to lose to Goro, but it can't be any face game characters, so that's why they've done that, I think. But
I think, again, probably a clever move, as you say, not to have a character that people know and love, because with a fighting game that's made into a movie, people are gonna when you pick up a fighting game, everybody's got their favourite character who they like to play as. So whoever you pick and whoever you kill off relatively quickly or in a function like it does with Goro, somebody's going to be a bit annoyed because they're like, oh, that's my favourite character, what the hell, I want to see more of them. So having a completely, you know, new character for the movie in that role makes a lot of sense, and it does feel a little bit throwaway for that character, but it kind of has to be, because that's kind of serving the function of, you know, the narrative and going, well, if Goro's this big massive, you know a feared fighter and he just gets killed straight away, it looks a bit silly. So you do have to see Goro be Goro, to begin with, you know. Obviously, you spoke about Raiden a little bit, so here are some names that could have gone for. So we could have had Danny Glover.
Okay.
Most probably well known for Lethal Weapon.
I mean, how would that have gone?
I think it would have been. As I say, I think it would have been perfectly fine because there's not a lot to do, really. It's just whether or not Danny Glover would be okay with having not a lot to do. I think it's that Oracle kind of, Morgan Freeman type role where it's like he just kind of oversees everything, and when the main characters are having a little bit of, you know, second thoughts, they come in and go, "This is your destiny. Don't worry, you're following the right. I cannot teach you anymore."
Is there any more for him?
There is.
Oh, yeah.
So another name, which I always say when this name crops up, because he crops up a fair bit, anything he's in like this...
Why does he crop up a fair bit?
You'll know why in a sec. So in the role of Raiden, we could have had Sean Connery.
Are you joking?
He was the first choice to play Raiden. And I always say...
I don't know about that one.
I think it would work only from the standpoint of, do you want to see a slightly angrier Scottish Lord Raiden? I kind of do.
Yeah, I do.
You know, it's kind of, it's like, I've taught you more than you can do. It's your destiny, Liu Kang. You know,
the slow clap. I like that bit. When does the slow clap happen? Do you remember? Oh, it's when they fight all the goons.
Yeah. And there's like, they fight like 3 of them, and then there's like 70 more.
What do you suppose you're gonna do about them? And they're like, and they're all like, oh yeah. So I don't think Sean Connery would have worked in this instance. I think that would have been an element of like, we need a name to sell this movie. Let's get Sean Connery. Yeah.
You know, I don't see him as. You certainly couldn't really do extravagant fight scenes. Okay, Raiden doesn't have any in this film.
No, does he fight? Does he do something at the temple against Liu Kang?
I think it's like a little kind of like Liu Kang kind of lunges for him, and he kind of like does like a little like arm drag type thing.
Does he do a lightning thing at that point?
Something like that, and then he says, and I'm going to do it in Sean Connery's voice. He's like, not bad for a beggar, you know, or whatever he calls him. Yeah. So, but I mean, I'd quite like to see it just because I quite like seeing Sean Connery in roles that he hasn't played.
I think Raiden's a good one it's a good one to imagine a lot of people in, isn't it?
Well, he actually gets recast in the second film, and he's played by James Remar, who probably most well known for The Warriors, and he plays the dad of Dexter in Dexter.
I need to watch the second one again because I didn't own it when I was younger, so I haven't.
It is just a very bad movie. I know the guy who plays Shang, Kang. I can never remember his name, but he's a very recognisable actor because he's quite a distinctive looking guy. But he plays one of the aliens in the X-Files. But generally speaking, they recast a lot of. I think the only person who's in it who was in the first one is Robin Shou. I think they recast Johnny Cage, and he gets killed off by Shao Kahn immediately in the first.
It's just a terrible decision, that, isn't it?
I don't think it's a terrible decision if the rest of the film's good, because I think it tells you. It's a bold move, isn't it? It's a bold move to kill off your main character from the first film in the first 5 minutes of the second film. It's a bold move. But I can get on board with it if it serves a function, if it serves a purpose. It didn't. It was like, bye Johnny Cage, and then done.
Yeah.
And also the guy who played him clearly didn't have any of that Johnny Cage swagger about him. It was just, oh, well, you're going to die quickly, so let's just get... Kind of the opposite of what happens with Master Boyd. He's in it very, very short, but he's a recognisable actor. They could have done the same thing with that in Mortal Kombat Annihilation, but they just chose sort of a relative unknown, and it doesn't really work. I mean, you've got Sindel, who's, again, a great character from the game, and she's made out to be...
There's that meme, though, isn't there? Like,
yeah.
Now...
What's the line? Now, yeah, it's like a well-known terrible line that's just jumped out of my head. Oh, yeah, now you will die, or something like that. But it's so, like, ham-fisted and corny, which I think the first film is corny in places, but as I was saying, it never kind of oversteps its welcome and never gets to a point where we just don't want to see it anymore. So as soon as there's an eye roll moment, it's very quickly on to the next scene or does something, which I don't think happens in the second film. And interestingly, it's in because if you actually compare the film to the game, other than the characters and the story, they're polar opposites, really. Because obviously, too bad you will die. That's it. That's it. Yeah, it's such a that's
too bad you will die. It's the timing of it. It's just nothing. I don't know what happened.
I can imagine there was probably like 5 different takes of stuff, and it was a case of, okay, now just do one that's a bit different, and they went with that one for some reason. But I totally lost the track.
Sorry.
Yeah. No. It's so they're actually quite different from the game in the film, and part of the reason is because obviously the gore that we see in the games, that's become a staple of the games, obviously isn't really present in the film because it's PG-13 or a 15 for UK audiences, and usually I'd be looking at that and going, well, it's not going to work. How can you have Mortal Kombat without all the gore and the excessive violence? So how can you do that? But for some reason, again, probably it's the time that we saw it in our childhoods and we have those nostalgic memories. But for some reason, for me anyway, it works. It works not having to see that, that gore and that excessive violence. I'm glad it
doesn't. You know what I mean? Could you imagine that same movie with it in?
I think that's kind of where... And not that it's massively overly violent in the 2021 remake, but it's certainly there, and it doesn't necessarily add anything to it. Personally, for me anyway. So, and that was a decision that was made by New Line Cinema. So we hear a lot about studio influence and studio executives going, no, we want to. And usually, as I say, that's obviously a money-making decision, because they're going, well, if we can do PG-13, we can appeal to a wider audience.
Yeah.
So it makes sense in that regard. But usually I would be saying, that's not going to work. A bit like I said with Resident Evil, how do you do a PG-13 Resident Evil? It's about zombies and, but it works doing that, in its some things work, some things just don't.
I think why it works for me that there's no violence is because the set design and stuff in a way is because when they go to Outworld, there's all like horrible skeletons everywhere. Like Reptile is just a bit of a gross thing, and when Liu Kang does his Bruce Lee stomp again, at the end, on Reptile, he goes and he like steps on all the it's like so what I was saying is, Reptile turns into like maggots at that point? What's going on there?
Yeah, I didn't really understand that, and I chose not to look too in-depth at that.
But because there's gross stuff, like there's the bit where it's all Reptile stuff, actually. Reptile like squirts that liquid in front of, in Liu Kang's face towards the beginning, which is a bit like Jurassic Park grossness,
that scene still haunts me to this day.
And there's like Kano eating all the chicken wings, and Goro's gross because he's like this big, and we haven't spoken about Goro yet, we probably should do, but and everyone looks a bit sweaty, and I feel like there's enough like physical.
It's grotesque without it being excessive, and without it being, for example, it's not. Just to get another one of our old episodes in there, it's not like The Fly in that kind of body horror element, which you could quite easily do with Mortal Kombat because it's all there in the games. But there's enough of that where it, again, still feels part of that world. One of the things I said about Kano, when he's eating that chicken or that turkey leg or whatever it is, feels very grotesque and but he has like a fumbling awkwardness about him where he's obviously only ever used to being how he is with other people. So he's like, hi, I'm Kano. I'm a big, powerful dude, and Sonya Blade, and all of this. And then when he's in the presence of what Outworld would call real power, like Goro and Shang Tsung, he's like, well, anyway, what do you need me for? He just becomes a little bit of a wimp, and I think that's quite a nice character arc. Unfortunately, I think Kano then dies relatively too easily and too quickly. I want to see a bit more of Kano because I like that character.
What are the rules in Mortal Kombat? Because I think the first thing that Kano pulls out a knife, and he taunts Sonya, doesn't he? He's like, oh, do you use that knife to do something? I don't know what she says, and then he goes, put a nice smile on your partner's face from here to here, or whatever. He does that, and it's like, what are the rules? Why is he allowed that? There's that other fight where Liu Kang has a stick fight with the guy that's a bit like has a lion roar. Yeah,
he's a little bit like Eddie Gordo from Tekken.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I quite like that bit, actually.
That Brazilian jiu-jitsu type style of...
So stick fights.
Yeah.
And then I know it all goes out the window when you fight all the ones with real crazy powers, but they don't spend too much time kind of, going into the in-depth ins and outs of it. And I think that's a good thing because that's when you can start to pick holes. So you've made that point, and actually we can both say, my personal interpretation is that it's a fight to the death or until you give up. Yeah.
So that's why you can do anything you want as long as it's in the confines of that area there.
Because it makes you think, well, Sonya Blade, she had a gun, just bring the gun. And then there's also... what's funny is that, there's a bit where, because Raiden likes bringing up the rules, and there's that funny scene where he just captured Sonya, and then he goes... but there's one rule that, what's his voice? Oh, Sean Connery voice. He says there's one rule that he's neglected to tell you. And then Liu Kang goes,
she has to accept the fight.
She has to accept the fight. Yeah, and then he just goes, Liu Kang,
I cannot teach you anymore.
So what? He knows the rules. Yeah, so he's like...
Again, there's part of me...
His character part. You know what that reminded me of in a video game? It's like... You have exhausted all my dialogue options. So every time you go back to him, it's just like, Liu Kang, I've taught you everything you can know. Liu Kang, I've taught you everything. It just keeps saying the same thing.
It's also a thing of if I was Liu Kang, I'd be like, you haven't actually really taught me anything, if I'm being totally honest with you. You just crop up in the most inconvenient times and say something. But I think if they'd have tried to explain too much, I think it leaves you open to picking holes.
Yeah.
And then we're already picking holes, but we're doing it from
funny, really,
you know. But I think, you know, it's one of those things where the more you look at the more you know, when you consider, okay, well, how does Mortal Kombat work, or you know, okay, so how do you get to Outworld, or all of these things? The more you look at it, the more you can kind of
How
go
to get back? I guess Raiden.
A bus.
Raiden can't go there.
Yeah, do you not see the bus stop at the end?
Probably Katana knows his way back.
Yeah, and you know, things like Raiden can't go there. Well, we could go, well, why not? Doesn't really explain it, but it doesn't necessarily need to explain it. Just know that Raiden can't go there, and therefore they have to be on their own, and they have to do it on their own. So it kind of just about works. And I think probably an element of why those things crop up and why things perhaps weren't explained, perhaps as fully as they could have been, not that I think they should have been, is apparently during production the script was still being written, so it was almost a case of they were doing scenes and coming up with stuff on the spot, or okay, we want you to do this, we want you to do that, and then can you say this line, and then they'd go and film it. So it was, you know, which was always the case when you work with a kind of fluid script, where sometimes things do kind of get lost, because when you're making stuff, they're probably going, well, we've had a discussion about this point for the past 2 weeks, which we know about, but we're kind of forgetting that all of the audience don't know about that. So we're filling in the blanks where the audience won't. So I think that's probably an element of why some of those things crop up, and why, you know, why we're sort of saying the same things that we have been. But, one last piece of casting, which is interesting, because there was a sort of a slightly, I think it was just a YouTube series in the mid-2000s called Mortal Kombat Conquest.
I've seen it.
Which I think is, other than this film, is probably the best interpretation on screen of Mortal Kombat.
Wait, hold on. Mortal Kombat Conquest. Wait, what?
Sorry. Oh, no, sorry, not Mortal Kombat Conquest. Sorry, because that's another TV show, which is a bit 90s and a bit hokey.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. There's a YouTube series. Oh, what was it?
I think I know.
Mortal Kombat Legacy.
Yeah.
And it takes it in a very dark way. So it does make it a slightly more.
I remember that being good.
It was right around the time, I think, of like The Dark Knight came out, so everything was getting a lot darker.
Yeah.
You know, more based in realism. And one of the people who plays Jax in that is a guy called Michael J. White, who played Spawn in the Spawn film. Well-known martial artist. He's on YouTube, and he does like a perfect like sidekick, almost in the style of Johnny Cage. He's like perfect. He's worked with like the UFC fighters like Kimbo Slice and stuff like that. Quite a recognisable guy. He was slated to play Jax in the film, but left in order to do the film Tyson, where he played Mike Tyson, which you could probably understand, because Jax in this film is a bit of an afterthought.
Well, he's not in this one.
He is. He's at the very start where Sonya Blade is going to get Kano from the nightclub.
She says Jax, doesn't
she?
Yeah.
But okay, he has like one or two lines in, and you never see him again.
Yeah. Oh, and one of his lines is, Sonya, don't get on that boat. You know, I don't know what he says, but it's very much like a hold me back moment. You know, like Sonya's like, he could just go run after her, but he just stands there.
Yeah, he just watches.
Yeah, probably.
Like, you are a special forces guy. You could jump in and help her out, but there we go. And probably the reason for that is because they didn't have the person they wanted to play, and so weren't going to flesh out the character for that.
Fair.
So I can kind of understand that. But interestingly, so we obviously spoke quite a lot about other video game movies and, Mortal Kombat. So this is the fourth highest grossing video game movie, and the only ones that are higher grossing than this are Lara Croft, Tomb Raider,
Angelina Jolie,
Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time with Jake Gyllenhaal.
I didn't even bother watching that.
It's bit pants, if you ask me. And Pokemon, the first movie, Mewtwo Strikes Back.
That was massive, wasn't
it? So...
But, yeah, well, interesting.
So I think that brings us on quite nicely to, unless there's anything else we should cover, but quite nicely to further watching.
Okay. One thing, have you done on this podcast, do you say he would imagine in the roles?
Sometimes do, if there's like I think this lends itself quite well to it, because there's a whole host of characters that aren't explored.
I don't really have any particularly, but on this time rewatching Mortal Kombat, I felt like if there was none of like the ha-ha-has and the sort of humour about Raiden, he kind of just reminded me of Steven Seagal. like all of the the quiet, tone of voice, like not really being present. I just thought white wig on Steven Seagal. It would have been the same movie, but it would have been just more serious, probably. But I just thought, God, he really reminds me of Steven Seagal this time.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what.
Yeah, he kind of does. I'm quite glad though Steven Seagal isn't in this.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
Anybody who's seen Under Siege,
F-17 stuff. Unsiege 2.
Steven Seagal just makes a lot of weird acting choices, and has since made a lot of weird friend choices post his acting career. So I think less said about Steven Seagal.
Yeah, anyway, that was my
better
only one.
Really.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a few kind of characters who, as I say, aren't explored in this, who I think you could quite easily do some castings for. Like one of my kind of favourite characters from Mortal Kombat is Nightwolf. I don't know which one. I think he's in maybe 2 or 3 in the games. I think you could put. There's a guy who not for the fighting, but just for the wise kind of words that Nightwolf kind of has. I don't know the actor's name, but he's in the X-Files, and he plays a Native American who's Mulder goes and speaks to, and everything he says just sounds very wise.
Yeah,
and I think that's kind of the perfect kind of role, or the perfect kind of guy to play Nightwolf here. Just trying to think of some other characters who we don't see. Obviously, in the latter one, you get people like Sindar and Shao Kahn. Which I think Shao Kahn's not too bad in the...
Is it Annihilation?
Yeah, Annihilation. He's not too bad, but I do feel he's very much megalomaniac. I want to take over the world. That, fairly by the numbers B movie.
I think that's why this one works, because Shang Tsung's not the main villain. And
also we don't really know what his motivations are, other than to win the tournament, but we don't really know what.
He's probably got some...
He's got a plan, obviously. But we don't
wants immense power as well.
Yeah, but again, we don't really know. It's never fully explored, and I think that's a good thing, because I think as soon as you explore it, like they do in Annihilation, where we kind of know exactly what Shao Kahn's doing, because he wants to be ruler of everything.
He goes into final boss mode, doesn't he, Shang Tsung, when he wears his vest, jerkin. When I just remember when I was like, oh yeah, it's that. It's just that outfit, isn't it? He's like, he's in final boss mode now because he's changed his top. It's so weird how effective that can be.
Yeah, and his costume design is so cool. And that's another thing, actually. I think they have a good mix of characters who look exactly like they are in the game. Like, obviously it's quite easy with Scorpion, Sub-Zero and Reptile. They kind of look exactly how they look in the game. Johnny Cage looks very, very similar. Blue shirt and black trousers. But they have enough characters, like Shang Tsung doesn't really look like that in the games. He wears like more sort of like traditional Chinese robes in the games and that sort of thing. But having him wear a big long black leather jacket,
I think it's quite a stark contrast with that temple scene.
It's like very modern and edgy and a little bit rock and a little bit cool, and then it's like with this really kind of like ancient temple area that looks very traditional. It's, as you say, a nice contrast.
I don't think there's many people that can look down the lens of a camera and say, Liu Kang, you're next, or whatever he says, like that well. Like, I just think that is such a...
And even the line, your soul is mine.
Yeah.
Like, the actual line isn't anything great. It's kind of a bit, but the way it's delivered and his portrayal of doing it is what makes it really kind of hit home. As I say, that's probably the next thing that I think of other than the music. When I think of Mortal Kombat, I think of Your Soul Is Mine.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was something that cropped up in the games beforehand or if it's something that cropped up afterwards post this film. So that's quite an interesting thing. But further watching.
Go on.
So I think the first thing we've kind of mentioned, I would say, is Enter the Dragon. It's probably a good place to start because it's a fairly similar narrative to it.
Yeah.
And it's Bruce Lee, which is what Liu Kang is based off of. And generally speaking, it's heavily influenced by that kind of Bruce Lee 70s martial arts movies.
It's kind of like this is like a family version of that in a one way of looking at it, because Enter the Dragon you don't really want to like watch with a younger person. Like, but this Mortal Kombat I watched when I was really young. You know, I just I think you know what, I'm not that long ago rewatched Enter the Dragon, and it is just so cool. Like the final fight sequence.
I've never actually sat down and watched it in its entirety. I've watched clips, and obviously, you know, Bruce Lee is, you know, a master of martial arts, and his fight scenes are always on point, you know. So another one I've got down is, as we mentioned earlier, Event Horizon. I think it's very similar to Paul W.S. Anderson's directing in that. It's pretty on point, and it's a great film as well. I think if you want to watch what could have happened with Mortal Kombat, watch Street Fighter, because it's kind of it's like a testament to, even if you don't like it, it could have been a lot worse. I mean, also you've got the remake. I don't think it's a bad film. I think it fleshes out some of the characters, so it focuses a lot more on Scorpion's character arc, and that's played by, and I can't remember the actor's name, but it's the dude who was in Ring and was in Bullet Train. So well-known Japanese actor.
What put me off even whether watching that is just because they made up a new character as the main character.
I never understand that.
That just seems, that's enough to make me not go see it.
I can, as I say, they've made up some characters for this film for 95 version, but it's because they're throwaway and because they're not going to be a staple. To create a whole new character to be your main character, I think there's enough characters in Mortal Kombat for you to pick a main character. If you don't want to do Liu Kang, you can focus on Scorpion. You can focus on, there's just so many characters that you can focus on without having to create a completely new one.
Most of the characters have a sort of...
have their own motivations, their own backstory, their own, there's obviously you've got other outworld characters that weren't explored in either of them. You think, characters like Baraka, like Cabal. I'm just trying to think of other characters now, and my mind's gone blank. But there's a whole host of characters that you could have chosen. So I don't really understand that choice.
Nightwolf's a good shout for one of the main ones, to be fair.
I always remember him from the Mortal Kombat cartoon. Do you remember that on Fox Kids?
Oh, I don't remember.
Oh, again, it was a bit like the X-Men TV series, comic series, but Mortal Kombat. Nightwolf was pretty cool in that.
But the DVD you got me for this had a special featurette of I
watched that as well. It's got it on my version.
What the hell? Yeah. What was going on with some of the animations and the CGI bits?
I think it was I think it may have not been a properly produced and released version. I think it was just something they'd made and then was that's a cool little featurette to have on the DVD, because it didn't look particularly good, did it? I
feel like I should say quickly that when I watched them talk about this movie, I feel like the director said he sort of lied, to get his way onto this movie. He was only 28.
It was, I think it was his first big feature film.
And he said that he was kind of lied about how much he knew about special effects. He was kind of had to learn loads about it. And I think he did a great job. The CGI, even from the Star Wars movies, isn't great back from the sort of, the prequel trilogy. But the CGI bits are a bit hit and miss. But I honestly think Goro sort of stands up as much as... Goro to me stands up as much as RoboCop, the stop frame animation.
Yeah.
What's that robot called? Do you remember?
Yeah, I know the one you mean.
Yeah, I think gore because it's like I think it's like an animatronic thing stuck on a man or something.
Yeah, I mean,
it's sort of because it's so bonkers. I think it's much better than I think it's the best they could have done with it.
I think they could have. I have mixed emotions about it.
All right.
Probably because I always felt like the person. His proportions are a bit odd, and I know that sounds strange because we're talking about a monster that has 4 arms.
Yeah.
But he never feels in proportion, and he did in the games. So he was in the games. He's like quite big, and all that's different really is he has 2 extra arms and he's not human. Whereas in this, you can quite clearly see that there's a normal person wearing a big piece over the top of him. So the person is like, Goro ends up being like 7 foot tall, but you can quite clearly see that the guy's waist is like far too low down his body.
I think the creepiness of it does it for me. There's a bit where he's like looking through the grate with his like 3 fingers at the beginning.
That bit's pretty cool because it's like you're like, if you know, you're like, oh my God, that's going to be Goro.
Yeah.
If you didn't know he was in it.
I guess maybe. I'm on the fence of Goro a bit actually, but I think for someone that didn't know much about that kind of stuff and what they did, it doesn't look like you can't. It's not one of those movies you can't watch because Goro's too bad. Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, he could be better, but he doesn't ruin it.
He doesn't ruin the movie. Yeah.
I think sometimes that's the key, isn't it? If you've got something that's bad or not great, it's important that it doesn't ruin whatever it is that he's in.
Anyway, sorry, Ryan.
So what about your further watching?
For me, it's just it's the sort. I don't know how you really say that genre movie, but wuxia, like WUXIA. So, like for me, this movie is great, really, because I just like all the fight scenes. I think they're not all that good, but some of them stand out, like the reptile one and. Maybe the last fight scene I thought I enjoyed this time.
I like it's a nice touch to the pit, the level in where if you do an uppercut in the level and they jump up off the thing and they fall down on the spike. It's a nice little kind of like homage to that without it being totally and copied from it.
On the logo of like that. That's great branding. Just make the logo of the movie be the fight pit at the end.
It's perfect, isn't it?
Yeah, like it's on the cover. It's on this, the cover you see in your lounge as a kid of the VHS is the last level of the movie. It's cool.
I mean, that goes into that marketing thing. You've got so many opportunities to brand that, haven't you?
Yeah.
Obviously taken from the games, but then pushed even further with the film.
So I think for me, it's my favourite martial arts movie, like sort of a Western Eastern cross. Is Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. That's my favourite one. Yeah,
Chow Yun Fat.
And the fighting in that is way better. But there is a bicycle kick in. I like the reptile fight. There's a bicycle kick. Yeah, that's
which again is taken directly from the game. But to actually achieve that in film without using. I mean, obviously it's using visual effects, but not using CGI. They could have just done CGI with that, but they'd actually, I believe they used wires and, propelled up Liu Kang, Robin Shu to do it and then just do that bicycle kind of kick.
So if you want more wire stuff, the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, like...
That takes it to another level, doesn't it? That's like...
And like, when you watch the videos of how they do that, there's like 6 men on each wire, like pulling people up into there. It's just amazing. I think that's my main one, really. I feel like, what was the other ones? I think there's just some other action movie, like there's that Hero movie. The Shadow is a good one I watched like recently. I think if you like this and you want a darker one, then Enter the Dragon is obvious, really. And that, that's a groundbreaking film. That's like a different tale. That's like a really good movie. It's one you can say you like it to everyone and people think you're cool, whereas it's saying you like Mortal Kombat, like which one, like what?
It's one of the ones that everybody knows, isn't it? And for good reason. It's not one of the it's of that genre. If you say that genre, people know that film. So I think those are good shouts.
Yeah,
I totally forgot about Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon as well.
I only probably watched it in the last 7 years or something, and I think it's up there, and I don't really have a hierarchy of movies I like, but I would put that right near the top, number, maybe in the top 5 if there was a list. The Shadow one I say is just because. Yeah, Shadow 2018. If you want a bit more of that sort of stuff.
Who does that have in it? Just trying to think. I can't even think of what that film is.
I think I just saw it on Netflix. Something. It's good. Right now. I'm showing screenshots from Google. By the way,
we need audio description right now, don't we? Simon has picked up his phone.
I guess I'll probably leave it like that. I'd probably say. My further watching, I want to watch Annihilation now.
I literally watched Mortal Kombat last night, and then went on eBay and brought Mortal Kombat Annihilation because I'm like, I know it's crap, but I just want to watch it. Sometimes that's all you kind of need with a film, where even if it's terrible, if you enjoy it, it doesn't really matter. Sometimes there are terrible films that you just can't sit through. Annihilation for me is a film that I know it's terrible. I know it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but I enjoy watching it. Yeah. So that's definitely going to be watched over the weekend.
Further watching, I'm going to find out what Robin Shu, is that his name?
Robin Shu, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I would like to watch some of his martial art movies because I would like to do that at some point.
Yeah,
he's obviously
another film as well. Just whilst I've thought of it in that same sort of style, slightly more kind of a bit more Enter the Dragon-esque in its tone. But a film called Hard Boiled with Chow Yun-fat as well.
Ooh, nice.
From I think the early 90s, and that's a cop in China, but the fight scenes are very kind of naturally Chinese influenced, and I think that's kind of where a lot of Mortal Kombat gets that influence from. So
and generally those other films do the fighting better than this.
I would argue 100%.
And we just get a little glimmer of that in this movie. But the glimmer is enough with the IP we love. We love the world of Mortal Kombat, so we got a glimmer of the good fight scenes.
And I think that's actually probably a good kind of jumping off point for probably a lot of Western audiences who would watch this film. And if they don't necessarily like the acting or they don't like the story or anything like that, you can take the fight scenes and go, well, I like those fight scenes. Let's watch more films with those fight scenes, and that's probably that could be the gateway drug, as I say, into those Chinese martial art films and those Japanese martial art films.
Yeah, agreed. Gateway drug, Mortal Kombat. Go through the portal to Outworld.
Yeah. Okay. I think that brings us on nicely to the end of the episode, I believe.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, Ryan. I'll see you next time for Dante's Peak.
Michael Caine's Tangerine Sunscreen. Order now to receive your complimentary telescopic applicator for when you need to apply your own bloody suntan lotion. Also available from the Michael Caine Tangerine Sunscreen collection are Harry Brown Bronzer. The Michael Caine Tangerine Sunscreen collection from the Michael Caine Tangerine Emporium. Because some people don't want to watch your skin burn.
So that's been Bury Our Bones with Cinema for this week. We hope you've enjoyed listening to it as much as we've enjoyed creating it for you. Don't forget to like and subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts, and don't forget to head over to our socials to stay up to date with everything Bury Our Bones with Cinema. Until next time, I've been Ryan Etherington, he's been Simon Keet, and we have been Bury Our Bones with Cinema. And it will be a one-button job. Boom, 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 toom, toom, toom.
I have a terrible tendency to just scroll about but you're talking when we're doing it. I still find it slightly distracting.
It's a bit weird, but I think it's a bit weird. But I suppose
maybe if you listen to it back, see if it sounds. I was like, I'm gonna have to stop it. You're listening back like.
Good job I observed that well, wasn't it?